skill position players, specifically wide receiver. And this is a conversation that could take a while because I have a lot of thoughts on each one of these positions, and I'd like to gain your guys' insight on this. But let's start with the X position. And again, we know that these guys can be moved around. I think Brian Ferentz wants to kind of have some flexibility. Certainly, Kelton Copeland, the wide receiver coach, wants that as well. But let's run through the wide receiver X to start.
So Tyrone Tracy is still the starter at the X position. And as you said, these guys can move around. So Keegan Johnson, who's a freshman, a true freshman, is listed as second. And redshirt sophomore Desmond Hudson is third string.
Okay, so here's my thing. And we're going to, again, I want to get everybody's thoughts on this. So you got Tracy at 5'11", who we've been told by coaches is comfortable playing anywhere. I am a big advocate, and again, maybe some people are not. I am a big advocate for having a guy on the field who can go up and jump over a defender and make a catch, right? I'm talking Calvin Johnson. Now, again, I understand that these guys don't come around every day, but Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson.
Apparently, your last name needs to be Johnson.
Yeah. What's the guy from New Orleans?
Keegan Johnson.
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas. You know, a guy like that who can just go up and get it. And my fear
almost like a basketball player boxing out.
Yeah, and that's what we had.
Seal off the defender.
That's what we had with Brandon Smith. And I think Smith was sometimes underutilized. But I think we'd all agree that that's kind of what Smith was for Iowa. So my concern with now Tracy being that X guy is he's not catching fades in the back of the end zone. All right. He's not going up and jumping over a guy. I think he's very athletic, but he's just not that type of guy. He's 5'11". And so I've been an advocate for somebody, Iowa, trying to get somebody who could step into that X position, and that way you can slide Tracy over. But if you look through Iowa's running back core, there isn't a lot of height. You got Deontay Vines at 6 foot, Nolan Donald's 5'9", Tracy's 5'11", Johnson's 6'1", Arlen Bruce 5'10", Quavon Matthews is 5'11", Charlie Jones is 6 foot, Max Cooper is 6 foot, Desmond Hudson 6'3". He's the guy I've been calling on for months now. Ideally, given his, measurables, you'd like him to step up and find his way to the field. Am I reading too much into that, Alex, as far as having a guy who is big and who can get up and make a play? Or is that a concern of yours, having three starters? And I know we haven't gotten to the Z and F positions, but Tracy, Jones, and Regani are all 6 foot or less.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really do much about that. I mean, you're not going to try and cram a guy in there who maybe shouldn't be on the field just because he has a different skill set necessarily, unless he, has played his way onto the field. So I think we probably got a little spoiled with Brandon Smith. And like you said, he was, in my opinion, also underutilized with that ability to go up over defenders. But you just got to work with what you got.
Makai, your thoughts on the size outside for Iowa?
This is when I wish I had my own list up. I should probably do that, huh?
I mean, Corey mentioned basically every player in their wide receiver.
There is one guy we haven't brought up, and we can bring him up. I don't think he's going to see the field, though, because just Kirk's kind of, standard. But Brody Brecht is a guy I was really excited about when they got a commitment out of him out of Ankeny last year, because he's 6'4". And he's got great hands. The problem with Brody is he was not an early enrollee, so he's automatically behind the 8 ball there. And for a while, we didn't even know if he was going to be playing football. We thought he might get drafted by the MLB. So here's a guy who's decided to be a multi-sport athlete at Iowa. He's going to play baseball and football. But I mean, besides Brody and Quavon, or excuse me, Desmond Hudson, Jackson Ritter. I believe Jackson Ritter, Makai, maybe you can find this for me. I believe Jackson Ritter is a walk-on. I really don't know much about Jackson. I do believe he is a guy that Ferentz mentioned has played well in practice. I don't know if Ferentz is saying that as far as comparing him to all the other receivers on the depth chart, or specifically just looking at guys who he feels fits that X mold. So maybe Keegan Johnson at 6'1". Noah, you mentioned he's second on the depth chart. Maybe he's a guy who can spell some time out there. I do worry about it. Ideally,
looking at this list, there is a definite undersizing of.
Yeah, is that just me,
talent.
or is that's not just me, right?
It's like every single guy is like.
Is that normal though? I mean,
I don't think so. Usually, you have one or two guys that are in that 6'2" to 6'4" range.
I'm going to give you some of the better wide receiver cores, if you will. And the first one that comes to mind was the 2009 successful season in which Marvin Mcnutt, Darrell Johnson-Koulianos, Trey Strauss, Colin Sandeman were the guys that year. I believe Sandeman was on. Yeah, he was on that team that year. So I want you to look those four guys up and give me heights for each one of those players.
Okay.
Again, Sandeman.
Let's take them one at a time. So
Marvin Mcnutt. Let's see. I know Marvin was over 6 foot.
6'2".
So there you go. We don't even have to look up the other ones, right? We don't even have to look. My point is, they had a guy who fit that X mold, right? So Marvin Mcnutt was the guy in 2009. That was an Orange Bowl winning year, right? Going on to 2015. Not a great receiving core in 2015, but it was a year where Iowa goes 12-0, was one play away from the college football playoff and a Big Ten championship. And the receiving core was Tavon Smith. So we'll start with him. Tavon Smith, Jacob Hillier are the guys that come to mind. Again, not a real strong core, but a passable core for a team that was very successful.
Tavon Smith, 6'2".
There you go. Right. Clinton Solomon. Clinton's a guy we've had on the podcast. And we're going further back. What, 2000? Trying to think of what year he was. 2004, I believe, was his big year. Where's Clinton Solomon at, Noah?
Now?
No. As far as height.
Oh, I was going to say 6'4".
Okay. Anybody cringing a bit now? I'm not trying to push the panic button.
The modern wide receivers are a little bit undersized.
Okay. Yeah, and you might be right.
You can tell that just looking at the roster.
Well, let's be honest. Kirk has never been known for great wide receiving cores. I mean, that 2009 team with McNutt, DJK, and Strauss, along with Sandeman, that was kind of an anomaly. So maybe we shouldn't compare them against other Iowa teams. Maybe we should compare them against other Big Ten teams. And I'm not going to take the time to do that. Maybe I should have researched that here in advance, Noah. But the point is, I think those numbers bear out what we were just saying, that I do think Iowa needs somebody who can go up and catch a football. Maybe it's Keegan Johnson at 6'1". We've heard a lot of good things about Johnson and Arlen Bruce IV, who, if you remember, he transferred up from Kansas up to Ankeny, played with Brody Brecht actually his senior year. But again, Arlen Bruce is 5'10". He fits the slot mold. Charlie Jones is 6 foot, Keegan Johnson 6'1". But Micaiah, you're saying you don't think maybe that inch or two is that big of a deal if one of those guys who are 6 foot or 6'1" can step up.
If they have enough athleticism, it doesn't matter. That inch or two doesn't matter.
Okay.
But they need to have enough athleticism to make up for that. I'm just looking at this from because I'm more of a basketball guy than a football guy. Like that inch or two in basketball means you're roughly the same height. I'm not entirely sure what that means in football, but I would assume that as long as they're maybe just a little bit more athletic at that slightly smaller size. Well, I think the weight also plays a big role in that too, which you haven't really focused on, because that weight can help you to hold your position, especially in the air, because it takes more, I don't know, maybe I'm just being stupid, but it feels like that extra size can help you to hold your position when you're in the air or to fight for a position against somebody like that.
There is an expression, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
I've heard this.
I get what you're saying. I think walling off a defender is also an aspect of being a good receiver. I mean, you're a guy who can wall off a defender, and kind of like Iowa tight ends tend to have the reputation for doing. I thought, one of the guys I said in the spring that I said was going to be a breakout player for this team, and this was not me just blowing out smoke, was Max Cooper. And Max is a guy who came back. He came back for a 5th year. He could have graduated. All right. He chose to come back. He did not redshirt as a freshman. He chose to come back. He played as a freshman, played as a sophomore, played as a junior, but remember, did not have great numbers. He was competing for playing time with Amir Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith, Matt Vandenberg his freshman year. So I predicted Max Cooper would be a breakout player. I still kind of abide by that prediction. I think Max is, from a leadership standpoint, is a guy who can make a huge difference for Iowa's receiving core. I believe he's a track athlete in high school. He's got a lot of speed, has returned punts in the past. So I stand by that. But again, 6 foot tall, more of a slot type guy. But I do think he brings a good level of experience in various aspects. And he's hungry. I mean, he was hurt last year and hasn't really had an opportunity to shine yet. So Max Cooper is a guy who stands out to me. Alex, kind of go around the panel here. Who do you look to? And you can say Tyrone Tracy. I get that's the guy that everybody's talking about right now. But who would you look to as far as a guy who you foresee making a big jump at the receiver position this year?
Well, before I say that, I was going to add something to what Makai was talking about as far as height. This is kind of a basketball thing too, but height really doesn't matter so much as wingspan in some ways in basketball. And I think that's the same in football. I'm not sure if that's a stat that you can get for these guys, but you take a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's, my height, 6'2", 6'3", but he has a 6'10" wingspan and can dunk the ball basically without much of a running start. Whereas a guy like me, if you gave me his athleticism, I still wouldn't be able to dunk the ball quite as well just because I don't have the wingspan. And also, I think there's a slight thing going on with, you measure, and this is just my own little hypothesis, but you measure an overall height of a player by the top of their head. But I don't think where your head is really matters that much. It's more where your shoulders are. So if you look at a guy like Kevin Durant, who's already extremely tall, he doesn't have much of a neck. And I think if you look at pictures of him like next to LeBron, his shoulders are significantly higher than LeBron's. And so, where the arms are starting, standing reach would probably be a good way, I guess, to measure that. But for wide receivers, wingspan, standing reach, that type of stuff can be more important and can overcome a little bit of a deficiency in height.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the same thing. It's just about range. Just like from where you're standing, how far can you reach? When you jump, how high up can you get? Yeah. Right? So it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, wingspan plays a big role in that too. And as a wide receiver, having that range, the bigger your aura that you can catch things from,
because I catch footballs like this,
the more effective you would be.
Okay, so back to my question, Alex. Who do you see making a jump at that position?
Making a jump? I'd say Charlie Jones is my guess. Because I think what you're going to get from Regani, and I think he's probably a little underrated. Tracy obviously is probably the guy, but as far as making a jump, I hope it's Charlie Jones, to be honest.
Noah, your thoughts on as far as a guy, maybe a dark horse to make some noise at that position? Maybe not dark horse, but again, a guy who's going to make the biggest jump heading into September.
Well, I'm kind of thinking about Regani. I know Alex just kind of passed over him, but you think about last year, and again, this is looking at his stats comparatively because there were 5 less games last year because they played 13 games, including the bowl game, and only 8 last year. But his numbers went down a little bit. His yardage was well down from where it should have been from his production 2 years ago. His receptions were down last year.
Yeah.
So we know he has it in him somewhere.
Yeah.
It
No, he
wouldn't
was.
take too much for him to
He had a
step
down
back
year.
up to
But his average yards from scrimmage went up.
Yeah, but he did have a down year. I mean, I think overall, even he would say he had kind of a down year. And again, I think Smith Marset had a down year. I mean, I think
and
a lot
part of that
guys
might
had
have
down
just been the whole situation.
Yeah,
I mean,
the awkwardness of having to deal with a pandemic like this, this is something that they're going to have to deal with once in their whole life, and
Hopefully,
they're going to be much better prepared this season. Even though the pandemic is technically still here, there are protocols in place. People are vaccinated. They know how to deal with it. And teams are practicing. This season is going to be a lot closer. I don't think it's going to be 100% normal, but it's going to be a lot closer to what we accept as normal. And I think
agree.
a lot of players that had a down year last year, you're not going to see the same kind of thing this year. I also agree that I think Nico Regani is going to have a little bit of a bounce back season. His numbers were down a little bit last year. I think he's going to do better this year.
I'm going to stick with my prediction of Max Cooper. Haven't heard a whole lot of buzz from him during fall camp. Hopefully he's healthy. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. I feel bad for the kid. Seems like a really nice guy. Hard worker from everything we've heard. I don't know. I mean, I go a lot of different directions. I'd like to see Desmond Hudson. If there's one guy in this group that I'd like to see take a step, it would be Desmond Hudson. Now, I don't know. That's probably fool's gold to put stock in that. But I would like to see Desmond Hudson take a step forward because I think it's more reasonable than a guy like Brody Brecht who just got on campus.
just remember, Desmond Hudson is only a redshirt sophomore, so he still has a few years to fill into that position.
I believe he's a true sophomore.
According to this, it says redshirt sophomore.
Okay. All right. You're right. You're third-year guy, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, third-year guy, though. I mean, he could certainly make Brandon Smith and Smith Marset were playing as true freshmen, so
that is one thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned Desmond Hudson. According to this depth chart, and again, this is bound to change at some point, but the true freshman Keegan Johnson is ahead of him in the depth chart.
Yeah, Keegan, like I said, Keegan and Arland have been the guys, and they've looked great. So, again, I guess I go back to the Big Ten. Where is the Big Ten? I mean, go ahead and read the other two depth chart positions.
Receiver positions?
Yeah, the receiver positions, Noah. And as far as
so
what we have.
We went through X. For Z, it's Charlie Jones, Max Cooper, and then Quavon Matthews. 1, 2, 3.
So I don't know. Is our lads just listing like? Are they list? Is this from the University of Iowa? Because Quavon Matthews is. I don't know that they list 3 guys unless it's an or. Let me look this up. Let me look this up as we're talking.
While you look that up, I'll talk about the last position.
Sure, go ahead.
So Nico Regani is 1, Arlen Bruce the 4th is 2nd, and Deontay Vines is 3rd.
I think that's. I don't.
That's the depth chart I've got. I was just throwing that out there.
So again, I guess talk about this while I'm looking this up. Where, if assuming the Big Ten Network was looking at wide receivers and saying, "Man, this group is more explosive," how are they more explosive without Smith, Marset, and Smith? I'm not saying that as a rhetorical question, like they're not, but I'm saying where do you think the explosion is coming from if that's the position the Big Ten Network was impressed with?
Well, it could go back to what you were talking about with these 2 true freshmen. If they've been doing well and impressing people, that could be part of what caught their attention because these guys are new, true freshmen, already in the rotation to a certain extent, and they have to be playing really well to get that kind of respect and earn that kind of playing time in that position already. Especially when you're looking at guys like Tyrone Tracy and Nico Regani, who've been here for a few years already and are known quantities.
Alex, your thoughts?
You're muted, Alex.
Already commented on that earlier, so, and I don't know what they're seeing. I can speculate. Maybe they're looking at Tyler Goodson. They're thinking that's my best guess, but yeah, I mean, it could be newer guys coming in. I kind of doubt it. I mean, you're talking who's going to be on the field. Not sure how much that would factor in. Or maybe it's just a matter of, Big Ten people looking at last season and maybe they weren't seeing the guys for their potential, but more what performances they put out. I think it wasn't just Smith Marset. I think Brandon Smith had a subpar year. I mean, he wasn't utilized as much as he should have been. I think I don't see how this team is more explosive necessarily, but hopefully I'll be surprised pleasantly.
Okay, so let me give you the official report from the University of Iowa. I pulled up the depth chart that was released to the media. And first of all, Our Lads is sort of, I don't know where Our Lads is getting their information. For the most part, it's correct. However, the University of Iowa, Kirk Ferentz has not been releasing a 3 wide receiver depth chart for a while. Okay. So he lists a fullback. If you look at, and hopefully I'll explain this correctly, if you look at the offensive depth chart you're staring at, Noah, there's too many eligible receivers.
There are 9 receivers
on
this list.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying eligible receivers. I'm saying you've got 3 wide receiver positions with number 1 guys listed, right? A fullback, a running back, that's 5 plus a tight end. That's 6 tight ends. There's too many guys listed there.
That's
See what
true.
I'm saying? So this is how the University of Iowa is. This is what they have released. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz being the guy behind this. Tracy and Keegan Johnson are listed as 1 and 2 at one of the wide receiver positions. We're going to assume that is the wide receiver X position, if you want to call it that.
That's what Our Lads shows.
At the other wide receiver position, it's Nico Regani and Charlie Jones. But again, they're going to line up in different places given, again, do you have a fullback on the field? Do you not have a fullback on the field? Again, I'm looking more at, do you have a guy who can make plays that in the next type receiver is going to make? And do you have a guy who can make plays downfield, the speedster type? Do you have a slot guy? I guess that we shouldn't probably talk about wide receiver X, wide receiver Y, all that. So those are the top 4 guys right now. But again, we've heard good things about Arlen Bruce. Max Cooper's an experienced guy. And then the guys you listed, I don't know, again, where Our Lads is coming up with Quavon Matthews and Deontay Vines as being guys who are next in line. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But that's what the University of Iowa has listed.